Reading the card explains the card is a common thing that people say in the Magic community when it comes to actually understanding the rules of the game. So much so that Delirium Community College, that's kind of one of his popular sayings. It's even on one of his playmats, as you're seeing here. The problem is this isn't even the case anymore. You can't just read a card to understand what it does or how it works. Biggest example of that being the Companions rules change. I think that most people are in favor of this change. Companions were probably a mistake. Having to now pay 3 to put them in your hand from outside the game instead of just being able to straight up play them from outside the game is a big help, though Companions are still kind of problematic. I don't think that necessarily completely fixed the problem, but that now means that the companion cards that we have in printing, obviously it's fixed online, but in printing on physical paper cards, reading the card no longer explains the card. And this is worse than normal erratas. Normal erratas happen just because we update how we format cards, and that's a good thing. That's something that we should do. Old cards having updated versions that say this is actually how it interacts with the stack, or this is what its actual creature type is. That's a necessary change that I think most people are perfectly okay with. In fact, most people actually probably like these. So where I'm trying to go with this is the question of, is Magic getting too complicated? The two things that really have me thinking about this are, one, always getting told by my family and friends that the game is too complicated and that's why they can't wrap their head around it, which is funny because my wife is one of those people. And her and I play this game together called Unstable Unicorns, and it is very much like Magic the Gathering. So I think it's funny that that tiny leap you can't quite do. But the other thing is Unfinity, which is the new Magic the Gathering joke set. So before we get too far into it, I should clarify that I don't think Magic the Gathering is inherently too confusing. I think Magic is a lot like chess in the sense of the base rules aren't that confusing. It's easy enough to understand that you could play 1 land per turn, and your lands give you mana to cast your spells, and you can cast different spells at different times, and different cards have different effects, and you attack and you kill your opponents. And chess is kind of the same way. You have these different pieces, they have different number of movements, and your goal is to take out the king. So in that sense, it's very, very similar as far as the baseline is very, very simple to understand. The game gets confusing when you start playing optimally and start having these different interactions, which obviously Magic's been around for 30 years, so there's a lot of niche scenarios and different mechanics that maybe only came out in 1 or 2 sets, but that's what reminder text is for the most part. Basically, I don't think that Magic itself is too confusing, but it does get confusing when you start talking about playing optimally and very niche interactions. So let's go ahead and talk about Unfinity. Let's get this out of the way right now. I don't necessarily think that the Acorn Stamp is necessarily problematic. For those of you who don't know, cards that were not tournament legal, specifically in these joke sets, the cards used to have silver borders around the card, just so that you could quickly look at it, know that it's not tournament legal. In the new set, Unfinity, they now have a little holographic acorn in the bottom of the card, which a lot of players think that's confusing because it looks too much like the normal holo stamp that's on the rares, and it also is so small that you have to actually take the effort to look for it in order to know right away. I think the main reason they did this was to make printing easier in the factories when they made this, because about half of this set is actually tournament legal. It is Eternal legal for Commander, Legacy, Vintage, and so maybe doing the different borders would have made packaging or printing too hard. So doing it this way is probably the right way. I understand how that confuses some people, but I don't necessarily think that's problematic, so that's not necessarily the point of this video. What I do want to talk about are stickers. What are stickers, you might ask? Stickers can change the name of a card, they can change the art, they can add abilities or change abilities, and then they can also change the power and toughness of your creatures. You can pay to use stickers and put them onto your cards from sticker sheets. Some cards say when they enter the battlefield, get a ticket, whatever, and then yeah, you can chip those tickets in to get the stickers. The sticker then stays on the card as long as it is in a public zone. And then for rules construction, you need at least 10 different sticker sheets and choose 3 of them at random at the beginning of the game. You just choose 3 sticker sheets to have if you're playing limited, sealed, or draft. I think this is quite comparable to Dungeons and taking the initiative from the D&D crossover sets. That by itself is a problematic situation because I think taking the initiative is close enough to just venture into the dungeon that they should have just made them the same thing. It's already having you bring extra cards to your game outside of your deck and your tokens that you already have. You'll now also have to bring these, but now you're probably also going to have to take extra copies of the Take the Initiative rules sheet so that your opponents can have it as well. But I think it's comparable in the sense that it is something that you can interact with from outside of the normal game that requires you to bring extra cards to the game. So basically you have an extra deck of cards that you are bringing with you now. And that's something that we more or less haven't seen that much of in Magic before. And if that wasn't bad enough, they didn't do it once in this set. They did it twice. So now I have to tell you about attractions. There are cards that let you visit attractions, and when you do, you draw a random attraction. And you roll a d6, and depending on the number that you land on, if it matches up with the lit number off to the side, then you get to do whatever that effect is. This also happens at the beginning of your first main phase, which I didn't know. So the fact that I've been hearing about Unfinity and reading about Unfinity for a couple months now, and until I was doing the specific research for this video, I didn't know that, says that this is probably too complicated. And then it works similar to stickers where you have a 10 card minimum deck off to the side that you have, that they're all unique, they're all different. And I guess something else that's interesting about them is that they are artifacts, so they can be interacted with. If someone can target them to destroy them, you can recur them from your graveyard. It is actually kind of interesting how that interaction can happen. So going back to what I said at the very beginning of this video, that reading the card explains the card, that does not apply to these cards at all. Stickers, attractions, there's no reminder text anywhere. You just have to know all of this crap. And we're turning into Yu-Gi-Oh! By having to have all of these extra side decks and carry around all these extra cards, which, by the way, is also problematic because I have a hard enough finding commander decks that can hold the perfect fit Dragon's Shield inner sleeves that wrap around. Like if you double sleeve a deck with those, it's very, very hard to find a deck that can fit the whole deck. So what you end up having to do is, if you're doing this and that especially, you're just going to have multiple deck boxes or one of those really long ones that holds multiple decks. Just to play a game, it's so silly. I miss the goofy side of the unsets, you know, where it would be like, ask a player outside the game if they like squirrels. If you do, create a squirrel token, or do the chicken dance, or flip a card randomly. You know, like those are the goofy things that you're supposed to do in these unsets. And in this one, it's a lot of this really complex world building that it's like, oh yeah, that's quirky, that's unique, but it's not funny per se. It's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Between that and the topic of our last video, I'll link that in the description and up here somewhere. And if you're watching this video right when it comes out, you can just go back and watch it. But between these things I've talked about here in this video and in that last video, I will unfortunately not be buying Unfinity, which is too bad because I really liked the last couple. And yeah, it's too bad. I think the big question here is, does this have a long-term effect on Commander, Legacy, Vintage? Specifically for Legacy and Vintage, I think the answer is no. I don't think any of these are necessarily strong enough to make an impact on those formats. However, for Commander, I could see that happening. And because Commander's the most popular way to play Magic, it has become kind of the default way for players to learn how to play Magic. So I could definitely see that someone's playing with these attractions or the stickers at some point down the road with someone who is just learning how to play, and that's going to confuse them, which, granted, you should probably just have the wisdom and the better judgment to just not do that. Like, if you're playing with a new player, play something that they're going to understand, you know. So that's just as much on you as it is on them to understand it, you know. But I think this is a slippery slope in the sense of we should be able to read the cards to know what they do. If we have to read a bunch of articles online, and I don't know if they make reminder cards for these, I assume they might, but I don't know. I feel like this is incredibly confusing. I can't imagine that playing sealed or draft for this is very fun. It's unique, it's goofy. I can see why it might appeal to some people, they might just need to, if they're going to venture down these paths, especially in these unsets, they're going to have to make sure that they, in the future, make sure that it's something that people can just look at the card and, after reading it once or twice, figure out what it does. Because this is a lot to take in. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this kind of content, let me know down in the comments. And if you're new, check out some of our other content. We've done a decent amount of stuff on here and dabbled with this or that. Let us know what you like the most. Hit like, hit subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.